Y'all, level 170 is going to be the max level in Wizard101, and a bunch of people have been asking me, Sauce, should I do level 170 PvP? And today, I wanted to talk about all the new things we can expect at 170 and how they will specifically affect PvP. I would say that, especially recently, PvP has been completely held back by three major issues. One, there is a blatant amount of stalling in PvP. There are people that will sit on their ass and heal to heal, and they will not try to end the game. Two, there's a gigantic barrier of entry to PvP. This is something that I feel like people that already do PvP don't talk about a lot, but if you're trying to get involved, you need a pet. You might need one specific piece of gear from one specific template, and you might need to craft it in a certain way. And three, there are spam strategies that aren't related to healing that are still completely brain dead, like the strategy that some decks use, where you basically use a bunch of threefolds in a deck that gives 10 copies. You can then either Scion by striking and literally do nothing else the whole game, or if you want a different type of spam, literally fill your entire side deck with a bunch of Ellie traps or spirit traps or whatever and just trap stack like crazy and win that way. I'm not even joking. Those two strategies where you literally just spam infections on a death or literally just spam traps on like literally almost any other school, it works for almost every school. Those are the three big issues this meta, and I would argue that this update seems to at least try to address all of them with I would argue varying success. One, I genuinely think that healing is just gonna be less viable. Is it gonna be less viable enough for someone who wants to only heal to not like literally hold you hostage? That would be great. That would be ideal. We won't really know, but the fact that, like, you know, every school got a massive increase in the max damage they can run in PvP, and they also have access to all these circle jewels that give them extra damage, so, you know, if they're running a more defensive set, they don't actually have to give up damage. All of these factors combined makes it so that you can probably compete with healing on any school way better than you used to. I still think if you're an ice or maybe even another life and someone wants to stall you out of a game, I really don't see how that's not possible still. I think that's like the fact that right now with like 174 max damage at 160, fire cannot do anything against life. Life and ice, even at 170, their max damage in PvP is around there and they have lower damage per pip. So if you're a low damage per pip school, I still feel like when you go against a healing school, they just have to heal spam and they can stall you out of a real game. So while this might actually affect how good heal spamming is, I don't really think this will fully solve the issue, right? If you're a higher damage school, you'll probably have more luck. This is a good thing. But at the end of the day, I don't think any school should just like go into PvP, face a life, and basically find it impossible to win if the life doesn't want to fight them. That's kind of what it already is like with basically every school against life, but the fact that there probably are still going to be some schools that are like that, I think it's a little sad. Who knows? I could be wrong. Maybe the damage is so high for every school that it will keep up with healing. There are now copy limits on people that heal spam, so maybe that will make things a little bit better. And let's not forget, right? Even if they do make healing less viable, every life wizard is going to be running around with way more HP because with the new circle jewels, they also added insane health jewels. So a life that has like a ward talent, for example, right? Which is, you know, in case you don't know, it's a talent that gives you 15 extra resist to whatever school you happen to have it against. What a life could do right now, right? And I think this is gonna happen. They could literally triple ward to a school, have way more health than they used to, and just spam brace and just take very, very little damage while healing, yes, less optimally than they used to, but with so much more HP than they used to that it doesn't matter. So the biggest issue right now in PvP, which is the stalling problem, I think it will be less of an issue to deal with on like maybe a storm or a death, maybe like a fire or a myth. I do think every other school might struggle as much or more against it, which is kind of sad. I don't really know if this entire, you know, stat change is actually going to affect PvP, because in place of actually being able to heal spam, life just has a ton of HP. Now, the other issue I would argue that's second from the top is gear acquisition, right? How easy is it to get the gear that you need? And here's the thing, I think Wiz has done a couple of really, really good things with gear that I don't think people are noticing enough, especially if they haven't looked at test run. While the Eternal gear, which is like, you know, very accessible gear for a casual player, was kind of ass, the new defensive set in Wallaroo does only give up crit to give you shad chance. This is the first like main main questline piece of gear since like they started doing all these gear audits. It gives Shad chance without giving up a stat that's super game changing. The Eternal gear used to give up Pierce for Shads. The defensive set now, it just gives up a little bit of crit for Shads. So that means you might not need to run a bunch of raids. You might not need to open up a bunch of packs in order to just keep up with the Shad rating against your opponents in PvP. Additionally, if you're dual schooling, you don't have to craft like, you know, like what it used to be like on a Storm. You need a Depth Wand, you need a Life Wand, you need a Myth Wand, all these secondary damage wands. Now they've just replaced secondary damage with universal damage. Again, really good idea. If their goal was to make it just a little bit easier to just get a decent gear setup for PvP or any challenging activity, it's a lot easier to do that. They nailed this out of the park. I think this is by far the best part of the Wallaroo update. The fact that gear isn't ass. Some pieces of gear that used to be ass are no longer ass, and some pieces of gear that you might have needed to craft multiple copies of, you basically don't need to do that anymore. And somewhat related to this, right? Let's say that there are no copy limits that they put in place. There's no evidence so far that they're gonna put copy limits on what you can spam the hell out of in PvP. And I know what you guys might be thinking, like someone that just spams threefold, right? Or just someone that spams traps. Like, why is that so broken, Lays? And aren't there tools against it? There are obviously tools against traps. There are tools against weaknesses, but all of them make you lose pips. So the only way to really punish like someone that trap spams you or weakness spams you is to use even higher pips, you know, counter that actually does damage. Will that be easier to do now that we have more universal damage? Maybe. The idea here, right? Let's say that, you know, for some reason or another, someone decided to use 12 threefolds against you in a game. Now, as a balance, you could run a bunch of myth pins on your main gear, and you could run all this universal damage on your, you know, Athame, Ring, and Wand. And then you could use Stone Colossus, which when you have the Spellman upgrade, you know, it turns weaknesses into damage, turns it into an OT. Y'all have probably seen it at this point. But that's not something that you could have done at level 160 PvP, right? You, like, a balance could never go into myth because the gear that was available to them didn't give secondary damage to myth, right? The Aeon Wand, the Aeon Athame, the Aeon Ring never did that. So we might see a scenario where, like, let's say there's a very dominant spam strat, like maybe it's traps. Maybe a lot of schools will go into life or fire. And if the dominant strat is just weakness spam, maybe a lot of schools will dual school into ice and myth. I guess that's a vision that they're going for. I'm just not convinced that there's enough counters for enough schools against things like traps and weaknesses. The reason I'm not talking about blades and shields, you could always just earthquake them off and just keep going on with your day, right? You can infinitely remove them. There's no real way to infinitely remove weaknesses. There's no way to infinitely remove traps, and that's kind of why people just pack 20, 30 traps, 30 infects, and just spam them. I'm not really certain that someone just that trap spams or weakness spams, like, I'm not really certain that just centauring or stone colossusing on a bunch of schools is going to do anything about it. I still think they gain too much value on you, and let's not forget, now with all this extra damage, a trap gambit or a weakness gambit, it's going to do way more damage way sooner. So to really sum it up, the pros are that it's way easier, I think, now to get into PvP and run cool strategies. That is a massive W. But I'm not convinced yet. I guess we'll see when we actually do PvP. I'm not convinced yet that some of the bigger issues like heal spamming and trap and infection stacking like crazy, I'm not sure those are actually gonna get addressed. I think you'll have more tools against them than before, but I think they were so broken to begin with that I'm not really sure what we have is enough even at level 170. It's a mixed bag, but I do think it'll be better than before, and I think that is good, especially because I know a lot of people probably got tired of the way PvP was at 160. I think things are getting better. Hopefully way better, but you know, maybe just a little. So should you try it? Honestly, why not? Maybe you'll like it way more. The pacing is going to be way different, so I think for that alone, it's going to be comedic to try it. And it's not like you have to sink in a bunch of time to get into it anyway, so I do think they've done some good things to PvP for 170 that just weren't a thing at 160. Let me know what you guys think. Are you guys going to try level 170 PvP? Let me know what you guys think will be broken. Let me know what you guys think, you know, might need to get buffed. I look forward to reading all of y'all's comments. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Leave us up if you're new. And if somebody hasn't told you you're awesome today, they doing something wrong. Stay awesome. See y'all soon. And yeah.